Our leaders have told us that the war on terror may last 100 years. The new kind of war against a shadowy enemy that can never be defeated.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Generation after generation will have to lay down its liberty in an endless war for global empire.
It was a breathtaking display of firepower.
And the Pentagon says we ain't seen nothing yet.
The perfect specter to convince populations to relinquish their liberty in the name of security.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
And if he does not disarm, the United States of America will lead a coalition and disarm him in the name of peace. Saddam Hussein still has chemical and biological weapons, and he is moving ever closer to developing a nuclear weapon. Iraq has a growing fleet of manned and unmanned aerial vehicles, high-strength aluminum tubes suitable for nuclear weapons production. Thousands of tons of chemical agents, 500 tons of sarin, mustard, and VX nerve agent, continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised. The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
They have weapons of mass destruction. That is what this war was about.
There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
Intelligence gathered by this and other governments leaves no doubt that the Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised. Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here. The Iraqi regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised. Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction.
They have weapons of mass destruction. That is what this war was about.
Where are Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction?
Former Chief Weapons Inspector David Kay said last week, quote, "We were all wrong about Saddam's WMD."
By now, the world knows there was a massive intelligence failure in the war on Iraq. President Bush and other countries.
The failure to find Saddam Hussein's alleged weapons of mass destruction has raised serious questions about the legitimacy and legality of the ongoing war in Iraq. But as both American and Iraqi casualties escalate, and as the conflict becomes more chaotic and deadly by the day, debate within the United States continues to focus narrowly on whether American intelligence agencies provided accurate enough information to justify going to war. In the process, a larger question has been all but ignored. If the war was not about weapons of mass destruction, what is it really about?
I keep asking the questions of why and how. Does this incident even have a purpose?
Pursuing this question forces us to consider a different story.
The terrorists attacked us and killed 3,000 of our citizens before we started the freedom agenda in the Middle East. They were... What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
Out of the sorrow of September 11th, I see opportunity.
It's not immediately evident, and no one in the administration is talking about it openly, But the war on terrorism could produce major dividends for the United States.
In Central Asia, Caspian region's enormous and valuable oil and gas resources.
Crossing war-torn Afghanistan to Pakistan and eventually India.
September 11th and the extraordinary events, the tragic events of September 11th did create a new reality. As with every event, there are opportunities that arise from it.
Indeed, it may well be that Washington has already begun to take advantage of those opportunities.
America will have a continuing interest and presence in Central Asia of a kind that we could not have dreamed of before.
In the name of the war on terrorism.
A biological or chemical attack in as little as 45 minutes. We cannot wait for the final proof.
Efforts to acquire nuclear weapons.
Develop nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. The regime is seeking a nuclear bomb. And with fissile material, can build one within a year.
Iraq has never had the capability to do that. They didn't have it in the first Gulf War. They didn't have it in this war in Iraq. And they don't have it any way of getting it in the future.
Leaders will use worst-case assessments that point to nuclear weapons to generate political support because they know people fear nuclear weapons so much.
Biological and chemical agent to kill millions of people. Chemical weapons, including VX and sarin, mustard gas, to a massive and sudden horror.
Massive death and destruction. Death on a massive scale.
The danger to our country is grave.
Saddam Hussein cavorts with terrorists.
The ties with Al-Qaeda was just a scare tactic to exploit the trauma, the very real trauma that the American people have felt ever since 9/11, and to associate that trauma with Iraq. As you know from the polls, most Americans believe that Iraq had something to do with 9/11, and that was a very successful, very deliberate, and very unethical and immoral operation on the part of the PR people of this administration.
In the heart of this great city, we saw tragedy arrive on a quiet morning. September the 11th. September the 11th. September the 11th.
September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th.
September 11th, September 11th.
September 11th. September 11th.
September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th.
September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11th. September 11, 2001.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam.
Saddam.
Saddam. Saddam. Saddam.
Saddam. Saddam.
Saddam.
Saddam Hussein.
And danger.
Continuing danger.
Hour of danger.
Very, very dangerous world.
A grave new threat.
Horrific acts of atrocities.
Murderous regimes
dedicating to killing us.
Radical ideology of hate.
Slaughtered thousands.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons programs.
The deadliest of weapons.
Terrible weapons.
Nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons.
Poison gas.
Torture chambers.
Mass graves.
Deadly technologies.
Tyranny and terror.
Terror of threats.
Terror.
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 War on terrorism.
War against terrorism.
Global war on terror.
Global terrorism. 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 Terrorism.
Terrorism.
Terrorism. Terrorism. Terrorism. Terrorism. Terrorism. Terrorism. Terrorism.
the evil terrorists. Terrorists, 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 terrorists,
Terrorist, 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 terrorist.
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 Terrorist. Terrorist.
Terrorists, 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 terrorists.
Terrorism. The words are hypnotically repeated. Terrorism, terrorist, terrorist threat, and of course, believed to be linked to Al-Qaeda. But it's the so-called war on terrorism that's in our faces practically 24/7 as the inescapable focus of our existence.
I think about the war on terror all the time. Now,
one day, our grandchildren will look back on this time and ask, how was the war on terror won?
The entire U.S. ruling class, ruling elite, comes to see terrorism as the preferred means, indeed the only means, to provide social cohesion, to provide an enemy image for the society to keep it together. According to neocon theory from Carl Schmitt, you have to have an enemy image in order to have a society. It's a very dangerous thing, because now it means that the entire social order, the political parties, intellectual life, politics in general, all based on a monstrous myth. Monstrous myth.
Look, the CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of them. We had the Marine Barracks. We had our embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993.
That helped the terrorists blow up the World Trade Center the first time. They built the bomb. They got the driver's license.
The informant, the informant, a fellow named Salam, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer, he was given the assignment to put the bomb together. And he went to his supervisor, his FBI supervisor, and said, we're going to put a dummy bomb in here, right? And the FBI supervisor said, no, we're going to put a real bomb.
The FBI actually carried out the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. They actually hired Ahmad Salam and paid him $1 million and gave him real explosives, a detonator, and told him to build a bomb and to give it to the foolish people that he was controlling to allow them to attack the World Trade Center complex.
Unfortunately for them, there were only 6 people killed, not enough to pass the legislation. So what happened is 2 years later, April 19, 1995, down comes Oklahoma City Murrah building, 168 people killed. 1 year later, the anti-terrorism legislation that takes away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties is passed.
Smoke, right there, 105, 2 pounds. It's right there, it's black, it's iron. My wife thinks I'm alright. I called her and said I was leaving the building, I was fine, and I'm banged. It's 3 of us, 2 broken windows. Oh, God!